Okay, let's dive into this explainer. Welcome, everyone. Today, we're putting our focus on one of the most transformative and, frankly, controversial shifts happening in modern medicine right now, and that's the integration of artificial intelligence. Now, we constantly hear about the dazzling clinical benefits of AI, right? Things like robotic surgery or predicting diseases literally years in advance. But we really need to balance that enthusiasm with a grounded look at the ethical complexities. How do we harness this incredible power while protecting the very people it's meant to save? Well, that is exactly what we're going to unpack today. So here's our roadmap. We'll start with the medical AI revolution, move into safeguarding patient privacy, then algorithmic bias and equity, the crisis of trust, navigating regulatory challenges, and we'll wrap up with ethical AI best practices. All right, part one, the medical AI revolution, the high stakes of healthcare tech. To really establish a baseline and understand the sheer scale of what we're dealing with, the global AI medical services market is projected to reach a staggering $238.5 billion by 2032. We aren't just talking about a niche experimental tool anymore. We are talking about a massive, industry-wide foundational shift. AI is rapidly reshaping medicine, doing everything from diagnosing breast cancer on mammograms to predicting the onset of cardiovascular events. And on the ground, adoption is moving at breakneck speed. In 2024, 66% of doctors reported using AI in their practices. That's a massive jump from just 38% the year before. Clinicians are actively integrating these tools because they see the real clinical benefits, like reducing the time required for a cancer diagnosis from 40 minutes down to just a few minutes. But with adoption moving at light speed, the ethical safeguards are really struggling to keep up. Moving on to Section 2, Safeguarding Patient Privacy, the Vulnerability of Medical Data. Pivoting from the clinical promise to the sobering reality of the risks, here's a stat for you. 32% of all recorded data breaches between 2015 and 2022 happened right in the healthcare sector. And this is exactly why privacy is the absolute top ethical concern. At the core of every AI system is data, and in healthcare, that data is intimately personal and highly sensitive. AI requires vast, massive amounts of this data to learn and function. So if our data is already this vulnerable to breaches, feeding it into expanding AI networks multiplies that risk significantly. So where are the weak spots? The crucial points of vulnerability really boil down to three key privacy risks. First, unauthorized access through cyber attacks, which puts patient information directly into the hands of malicious actors. Second, data misuse. As sensitive data transfers between different institutions or AI developers, there's often a severe lack of sufficient oversight. And third, cloud security exploitation. While we do have strict regulations like HIPAA to protect patient information, modern AI applications heavily leverage cloud technologies, and those face heightened risks of exploitation. Next up, Section 3, Algorithmic Bias and Equity, the Flawed Data Problem. Beyond just keeping the data safe, we have to take a hard look at the quality of the data itself, because an AI system is truly only as unbiased as the data it's trained on. If developers train an AI on biased data, like datasets that overrepresent certain demographic groups or carry historical inequities literally baked into past medical records, well, the AI learns those exact biases, and this directly leads to unequal outcomes in the real world. We're talking misdiagnoses, underdiagnoses for marginalized populations, and ultimately a massive erosion of trust, where those marginalized groups might actively avoid the healthcare system altogether due to perceived and, frankly, real unfairness. Which brings us to Section 4, the crisis of trust, fearing the machine. These cascading privacy risks and baked-in biases directly impact the trust that patients, and just as importantly, doctors, have in these intelligent systems. There's a common misconception that it's only patients who are wary of AI, but in fact, 89% of doctors emphasize the absolute importance of AI transparency. They want to know exactly where this AI-generated information is coming from. Furthermore, 57% of medical leaders harbor deep fears regarding data security risks. The very practitioners who are supposed to be championing these tools are demanding clarity and safety before they fully trust them. And the biggest barrier to that transparency is what we call black box algorithms. These are AI systems where the internal decision-making process is entirely hidden from the user. It's like a magic trick. You put data in, you get a diagnosis out, but the steps in between are a complete mystery. I want you to think about this. Would you, as a patient or a doctor, confidently trust a high-stakes cancer diagnosis if you couldn't possibly understand the logic of how that conclusion was reached? Obviously not. That lack of transparency inherently damages trust. All right, Section 5, Navigating Regulatory Challenges, Governing the Ungovernable. If the industry wants to build trust and eliminate bias, there need to be rules, right? But creating a regulatory maze for an evolving technology is incredibly difficult. It's kind of like trying to govern the ungovernable. Here are the top 3 regulatory challenges we're facing right now. First, global fragmentation. Inconsistent laws across different regions create massive gaps in compliance. Second, the rapid pace of technology development is constantly outpacing the laws meant to govern them. And third, current frameworks, like the FDA or the European Commission's AI Act, often focus heavily on technical proficiency rather than true real-world clinical effectiveness for these purpose-built AI tools. So there is a massive regulatory gap that we need to bridge. Under traditional approval, AI systems often get the green light based simply on testing against historical data in a lab. But the proposed and much-needed outcome-based standard requires that the AI system actually proves and improves patient outcomes in a real, live clinical setting. Just because an AI is technically accurate on old data doesn't mean it safely helps a patient in a hospital bed today. Jeremy Kahn, the AI editor over at Fortune, actually hit the nail on the head. He notes, "I think it'd be much better if the standard was, does it improve patient outcomes?" And that's absolutely crucial. That is the point you should take away from this section. AI in healthcare shouldn't just be a neat technical trick. It must measurably and safely help patients in the real world to justify its use. And finally, Section 6, Ethical AI Best Practices, the Roadmap Forward. Okay, we've talked a lot about the incredible risks and the high stakes. Now, let's lay out some actionable solutions. Here are 3 direct, practical steps that developers and hospitals must adopt right now to mitigate these risks. Step 1. Ensure strict data anonymization and encryption to protect patient privacy during AI development and use. Step 2. Implement highly inclusive data collection. We absolutely must ensure training datasets reflect diverse populations to kill algorithmic bias at the root. And Step 3. Conduct continuous audits and monitoring. We can't just deploy an AI and walk away. We have to constantly evaluate its outputs to catch and correct biases or errors early. Because we know that global laws are going to take years to unify and catch up, our strongest defense right now is collaborative self-regulation. We need industry-led standards, where professional healthcare bodies step up to define and fiercely enforce best practices tailored to specific AI applications. Insurers, developers, and doctors have to work together to prioritize patient-centered policies. So I want to leave you with this final, provocative thought. We know the technology is already here, and we know the market is absolutely booming. But as AI co-pilots go mainstream in hospitals around the world, is our healthcare system truly ready to govern them?